You're listening to Estrogen Dropouts.
Hey, welcome back to Estrogen Dropouts. I'm your host, Erin. Today I am solo because Elizabeth is traveling. I'm really excited about today's episode. We have the special guest with us, Laura Gordon. She is a negotiation coach, a CDC certified divorce coach, and Supreme Court of Virginia and Circuit Court certified family mediator. She is also certified in the Juvenile Domestic and Relations Court, and she has spent over 20 years in insurance litigation and high-stakes claims negotiation. And she built her entire practice around one belief, that the people who come out of divorce the strongest are the ones who walked in with the right strategy, the right preparation, and the right person in their corner. Laura also works with people at every stage and age of divorce, from younger couples navigating co-parenting plans to those facing gray divorce, where the stakes around retirement, long-term financial security, and starting over after decades together carry a completely different and deeply personal weight. So we are super excited to have you, Laura. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just totally touched to really talk about, goodness, a topic that is absolutely growing. So thank you for having me today.
Yeah. Well, this is a topic, gray divorce, that I have wanted to touch on for a while. Elizabeth and I have done many episodes about relationships, friendships to long-term marriages. I know that, so for listeners who don't know what gray divorce is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It is the rising trend of marital separation among couples over 50, often after long-term marriages. And it has more than doubled since 1990, actually almost tripled, because divorce in couples 50 plus was less than 9% in 1990, and it has grown to account for over 36% of divorces today. I think the latest stats were like in 2025. So it's like a huge phenomenon. And I know we're going to get into some of why. So that's what I want you to tell us. So you are aware of the trends in divorce and how, couples over 50 are divorcing at a much higher rate than they ever have before. And so what do you think are some of the things that are driving this trend? Like, what are some of the reasons that we're seeing this rise in gray divorce?
Yeah, that's just a fascinating question. I think the number one thing that I think is people are realizing that they are missing out on quality of life. They have either, say, disconnected from who they are, forgotten who they are as a person. For years, they've been really focused on how to achieve success through, they've raised their children. They have tried different things about, what are their priorities, and they've kind of gotten lost. And in that, losing who they are as identity and the person of who they are. Well, after so long, maybe the two people are now they're kind of going through different paths in life, and they have different priorities. And over the years, they're like, wait a minute, we're not on the same path anymore. And we're looking for something different. And they feel just disconnected. They lose love. And they realize maybe there is a new chapter in my life that I can have as we, as embark on this new journey. And I think people are realizing that life is precious and people deserve to be happy, and they're no longer happy in this relationship.
Yeah, I've read some really interesting things. That is, I think they're living longer, for one thing.
Yes.
And so we're like, I don't want to spend the next 40 years with this person. I've already spent 30 years with this person. We've raised kids.
Yes.
And I think that's a common thing, when you're raising kids. I've joked about this, that kids are the death of a marriage. And I say it jokingly, having 3 kids.
I love my babies. And yes, it's always yes.
Well, because, then your priorities shift from your spouse when you first get married, and you're all, you're able to make them your priority, to then you have children and you make them your priority. And oftentimes the only thing that couples talk about anymore together is their kids, like logistics and, Johnny got a bad grade in science and we need to get him a tutor. And are you going to run married to her, ballet practice while I do this, and blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden when the kids leave, you look at your person that you've been married to and you're like, I don't even know who you are. I mean, you were basically the co-parent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people are. Then they come to this realization like, oh my gosh, neither one of us are happy coexisting. And maybe they kind of get accustomed to coexisting for a long time for things of priorities, like you're raising your children, you have a career, and you kind of get systematic in your own life. Someday, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I think I'm ready to kind of embark on what it might look like to live a chapter of intention. And if we're both not happy with each other, what does happiness look like if we, get this new chapter of separating and then eventually divorcing?
Yeah.
Not just person and not the other. Sorry, but and then you have to kind of journey through that too.
Yeah. And I think that the stats that I've read is something like 75 to 80% of all divorces are initiated by women.
Oh yeah. I could be, I will say to your point, yes, totally can support that. I don't know the stats totally, but I'll have some too where the men are initiating as well still. Oh, but the women, I think, like to your point, they want to initiate the divorce because they want to seek out happiness and freedom and independence and being that organic self again, but they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't realize, oh my gosh, am I the best version of myself? Because I have X amount of time to be that person. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've seen it all.
I,
And coming from your background in insurance litigation and negotiation, how does that change the way that you coach someone through a gray divorce compared to a traditional divorce coach?
yours. The 20 years that I had going through negotiations, I've learned like how to be fearless, kind of the techniques of understanding, listening to what the other party says, but actually the most important thing is coming in prepared with confidence. And I think where so many people maybe not get the best settlement or journey through their divorce is because they lack confidence in themselves. They don't know what they're really looking for, and they let the emotions drive the negotiations. Whereas in coaching, I kind of help parties separate the emotions. The emotions is your data for the moment. It's how you feel. It's the gap of what do I need in life? These are my emotions going through, whether it's grief, whether it's feeling lost, whether it's I want to transform, but what does that look like? These emotions that you're transforming into. But the negotiations, well, that's a business transaction. So I help parties really kind of separate that out, build in the confidence, prepare, understanding your finances. What do those look like? And then going in prepared from a negotiation platform versus an emotional platform.
Yeah, I think so. Speaking about financially, that is, I think, the thing that sometimes people will stay married because financially it makes sense. And they're like, to actually, like we mentioned off camera, we said, marriage is hard, divorce is hard, make your hard. And so talk to me a little bit about what do you think that people over 50 underestimate about when they're considering divorce, like financially, like what are they not considering before, or what should they consider?
Oh, no, that's a fantastic question. So what they need to consider is what do they want their life to look like? How much can they afford? What can they afford when they are on their own? But I think it's really important to understand like what pension looks like. What is the retirement that that the marriage has? Do both parties have 401ks, and what does that look like? So what does someone need to live on for the rest of their life? And I think one thing that parties forget to look at is like, what does health insurance look like? Especially in your 50s, you go in your 60s. Well, once you're divorced, you no longer have that health insurance from that other side, or if they had it through like employment. So how much will it cost to have your health insurance, especially through COBRA or things like that? So it's really understanding what one's needs are moving forward and kind of thinking about what does next year look like for me? What kind of house do I want? What do I want to, how do I want to live abundantly in the everyday world? So really understanding the finances, but I think most importantly, what does your social security look like? What does husband or wife social security look like? And just understanding that data ahead of time before really talking through it. And a lot of times the fears about, oh my gosh, well, how am I going to survive? Well, let's understand what everything looks like before really diving into the fear, because we may be able to answer those questions and allowing them almost on a day to day understand what they could actually start living in a peaceful time and a place without being so in a fear-based moment of life. Like, I'm kind of rambling on about this, but I'm going from like, how do you want to look at it from a year from now? And how does it look like right now? And but really it's health insurance, 401ks, pension, social security, understanding those numbers.
Yeah. So okay. So when somebody is getting a divorce, you can work with them as a divorce coach, like through the actual process, kind of like you're holding their hand, you're
Yes.
mentor. I think of it almost like as a mentor because a coach to me is like, go team, go. And like a mentor or a guide is like, it's like almost like a divorce guide, I guess is what you do. You're like, okay, here's all the things that you need to consider, which we've talked about the financial aspect and there's other obviously aspects to it. But then as a mediator, you're working with both couples. Like they're coming to you to sit down and you're an unbiased party then, and you're saying, like, here's what I think that, here to accomplish, without getting attorneys and paying attorneys, here's what we need to accomplish. And so is each state has different laws, right? As well as far as like what you're due in a divorce.
So every state has their own process and structure of like how long what parties can be separated with or without children, depending on how old the children are. Like in Virginia, usually it's a 12-year, separation. I mean, 12 months of separation before you can file for a divorce if your children under the age of like 18. But once they're 18, or if you once they, reach the age of 18, or if you don't have children, then the separation period of like 6 months. So, but every state, it's really important to understand what your state law is before, as you enter into divorce, and understanding what separation equitable distribution might look like in your state. So in mediation, every state mediators will kind of understand the law. Unable to give any legal advice, both coach and mediator. I'll put that plug in there because that's where your lovely attorneys can do that for you and explain the laws behind it. But as a mediator, kind of understanding the law so that when we mediate, it's really about allowing parties to guide them through clarity, decision making, to be able to make decisions and concessions based off the needs at the time and what marital distribution looks like, so that they can make better decisions. The mediator will help parties come up with those decisions, whereas, and they're neutral, balanced, help explain processes through as they're going through that journey. But as a coach, negotiation coach, working with just one person at that time, helping them organize finances, emotions, emotional regulation, self-care. It's much more of a personal journey when you're a coach versus in a mediation platform, looking at everything holistically.
You're not for one person or the other in mediation. You're just very balanced and saying, this is what the state, allows, or like if it's like a 50-50 or whatever. So one person can't say, I only want to give you 5%. And you're like, well, I mean, this is what the law allows in our state or in your state. I have a friend that went through a very long divorce. It took about 3 years.
Oh,
They tried mediation 3 times. And she was being very like fair, not asking. She was what our state allows, like equitable distribution. She wasn't being unreasonable, and he kept saying no because he didn't want to give her anything out of the marriage. And they ended up having to like mediation 3 times. She was like, please just let this work. I don't want to, because in the meantime, she's paying attorneys. He's paying attorneys, divorce attorneys are expensive. And I always think it's funny because if you think about it, divorce attorneys have no real skin in the game to get divorce done sooner because they're getting paid by the hour. So they don't care if you want to delay it, if you want to drag it out, if you want to ask for, you know, a particular item that is going to rub your spouse the wrong way. It's like, I want this and he wants it, or vice versa. But when she finally did have the trial, she ended up getting more than she asked for because the judge, like, I think was. But so I want all that to say, when you do mediation, how successful is it? Like, do you have percentages where you're like, 50% of the time we can solve, get everything kind of wrapped up in mediation, or, what is that? What are those numbers?
oh, sure. So I will, from personal experience, but I will say it's greater than 50. I would say it's more on the 70, 80% of the time. Because when parties come to mediation, there is a vested interest. First of all, mediation is always voluntary. So, and it's a journey, not every, and it's a case by case. Every mediation, every part, every couple, all unique. It's kind of like labor. If you've had a child, or those who don't have children, but I'm just going there. Every story, every situation is different and unique. So I would say about 80, because parties do have a vested interest. Number one, to save costs. As a mediator, we encourage parties to seek legal representation to understand the law, but they come in with a vested interest. Hey, we want to do this differently. We want to come out of this, mitigating our pain in some way, maybe coming out of it with some healing power. Mediation, you do get more time to talk about the emotional side of it, and that has weight. So if somebody says, I'm only going to give you 5%. Okay, well, let's understand why. And then, and it's through really kind of going back and forth to understand the why behind those arguments, and then teasing them out and seeing what that why is, and seeing there's an opportunity to grow from both parties, going back and forth. Well, if you want 5% of this, well, maybe I can get X amount of this, but understanding what we want and what our intentions are at the end. So people do have a vested interest to resolve. However, it does take two. So if one person, like your friend, that one, maybe they came into mediation having a message to like just mutilate the other person, well, then it's really hard to have a successful mediation.
Do you find that mediation is more successful in your couples that are over 50?
I do. I find that parties who come over 50, it's complicated because they do have higher assets. Been together a lot longer, so the monies, have grown, right? They've been working for 25, 30 years, and so they have investments and 401ks and maybe pensions, and they know they're getting closer to that retirement. So yes, I do find they do, because recognizing that life is short. We only have X amount of time, and how much time do we want to spend and money spending in this moment of pain? What is that going to cost you? So I do say that. And I'll even add to that. I do say that I wish, parties, when they do come to mediation, the preparation work that they have. One is understanding your own body, which I'll tap into there. Understanding as a woman, your hormones, because we are over 50, you're going through a lot of emotional and hormonal adjustments and transformations and changes. So knowing how your body is at the time and taking care of yourself on a daily basis, going through a divorce. I'll say this. Our bodies are built up of like 80% water? I don't know, a high percentage of water. Well, when you're going through a divorce, you are depleting like nutrients in your body, water, anything like that. You are dehydrating your body almost on a daily basis. So you have to ensure that you're staying hydrated. What that means is making sure you're taking care of yourself, understanding what your body needs, whatever the hormonal, whether it's replacement HRT, just understanding yourself to be able to make the best decisions possible. But you can't do it from a place of, if you do, it's a little bit harder to kind of catch up on. It's okay. You just want to make the best decisions, being your best self. So I think it is really important. So what I say is, yes, people do come into mediation, higher success rate at the time, but it's a little bit more complicated because we are talking about people who are mediating when they're 40 or 30 might not be thinking about Social Security.
Right.
Or whose Social Security is more, and when we're going to tap into that. And is it yours, or is it, his or hers, we don't know, but understanding that and understanding there's so much more to life afterwards, but understanding how to navigate through that. So it gets a little bit more complicated.
So it almost is like you are playing therapist in some ways, because the emotional aspect, I think, we've kind of touched on that. So like specifically speak to like maybe some of the emotional challenges that you have seen in clients, especially over 50, especially when somebody has been married to somebody. I mean, sometimes maybe it's their high school sweetheart and they've been married for 40 years or 30 years. And it's like, all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they've decided to end the marriage. So what are you finding is like the biggest emotional challenge for people over 50 in divorce?
So I would say fear of being alone. That's one of them. Like, what happens if I get sick? Who's going to be there to take care of me? So that's number one. One is regret. Oh, I stayed in this for so long, and now I'm starting from ground zero. And I tell them, no, you're not. you've actually built a life, your organic self, and may remind them of the gifts that they have in life and what they're going to be, how they're going to be reinventing themselves. So sometimes there's regret, there's fear, there is, can I date again? What is dating like in our 50s? We go into that whole chapter, like, again, transforming from, like, I want to say parties sometimes, or might feel like they're in a cocoon for so long. Now, how do we get into that butterfly? So we really, help transform that. Fear of what their kids are going to say. How are, how do we communicate this with adult children? So working through that. What are our friends going to be like? How do you get new friends? How do you establish like a new social life? So a lot of these fears are very emotional driven, but it's really true. How do I create this new life?
Yeah, that is, I think, something that I read is that even adult, actually, hold on, let me start. It's interesting that you talk about adult children because you would think it would be easier on adult children, but I have read that actually sometimes harder on adult children when their parents divorce because it's all they've ever known. And so I imagine that would be kind of a very heavy component to divorce.
Yes, yes, it is. Afraid of, like, well, what are the children going to say? What are they going to think? How do I address it with them? And it's just a completely different type of conversation to have with them, and just ensuring, I tell clients gingerly, I'm like, your children want to see the best version of you. They want to see the best version of their mother or father. So when you're going through this, showing them we love you. If getting divorced doesn't mean you can't be parent. That could still be a great parent. It's just the partnership between the two is different now. It's transforming into a different lifestyle. So those kind of conversations are really important to have and what kids are going to feel like, but it's absolutely can be a successful conversation, and holding parties' hands through that as they do this, have those, unfortunately.
So when you work with somebody as a divorce coach, do they usually come to you after the process has already started? Kind of walk me through, like, how long do you work with people for? What does that kind of look like?
Sure. So they come to me at all different stages. Sometimes they'll come to me before they even had the conversation. So I'll walk a client through getting ready to have that conversation. What does it look like? How are we going to have it with adult children? Which adult child are you going to have it with first? But before that, it's like, well, what is life? What do your finances look like? We work through the house, the investments, just kind of structuring, like, what is it going to look like once the process starts, but really holding their hand through those conversations and having kind of a peaceful practice moment, and knowing that it's okay. Cause as a coach, we're holding their hand through all the little micro moments of this journey. So really, and then once they've had those conversations, then it's kind of like taking a deep breath, kind of letting it digest and pausing. I really tell clients to slow down. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Let's be methodical about it. Give yourself pause to feel the pain, sit in the pain. It's okay. And then kind of like taking some more steps forward. But that's kind of how the beginning part of it is. If I was working with a client from the beginning, how do we have those conversations and when to have them? And there's no right or wrong time. It's just, when does it feel okay? Then we kind of start really navigating through the roller coasters of it, because there will be. But also at the same time, ensuring that a client is taking, again, a lot of self-care and self-love, daily things that they can do for themselves, that they're real in reinventing and recognizing, oh, I forgot I love to ski, or I love to do pottery. I want to go take yoga classes. Well, you can start doing those now. It's very important to identify the things that creates peace within yourself and start doing those daily. So we work on that as well as kind of balancing that out. And so, and slowly transforming in what is the emotionals, what are the business side of the divorce, and helping parties kind of manifest, create what new life looks like. What does it look like? Well, and setting some goals for the future. I used to talk about, what do you want to remember yourself by? How do you want to be remembered as you're going through this? Are these problems something that is going to be important to you 1 week from now, 1 year from now, and really helping them? Coaches think present and forward. Therapists will help soothe the past.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, they come to me at all different stages. Sometimes they come to me towards the end. I've been separated for 8 or 9 months. This is my attorney. This is what I have. And it has just been a nightmare. I have no boundaries. I don't know how to regulate the conversations. It's very high conflict. And those are really different set of circumstances. So in that And, in that situation, we'll create dialogue to help them stay regulated. For example, they might get, an email, a text, things like that, and they feel maybe kind of baited. And so I help them kind of recognize, okay, what's the intention of the conversation? How do we create some language that helps them stay protected, stay with boundaries, and really build up those boundaries so then they can remove some of the hours and the days and the weeks of conflict, which is really, really important. Because when you start to help clients take a conversation that might explode, be an overnight debacle, right? It's tumultuous. Well, if they're able to answer it, manage a conversation that may be like 5-10 minutes with really structured responses, they are now saving hours of their life and their time from an explosive conversation. So coaches really can help navigate those, really depending on a situation. I can even dive into examples, but it's trying. It's a total reprogramming sometimes.
Yeah, I love it. You're basically helping people regulate their nervous system all day long then.
Yes, yes.
I mean, I know you're doing you're thinking, you're helping them think about the long-term financial implications of divorce, which is huge. Like you said, retirement accounts, Social Security, all of that kind of stuff. But it seems like, would you agree that the majority of your time is kind of dealing with emotional, like the financial part is kind of cut and dry, usually easy, but the emotional side is, I guess, the one that's kind of like the wild card. It could be, like really great or really bad, or it probably changes daily and for the same person multiple times in one day.
It will totally, totally, 100%. And those who are divorcing over 50, well, they've been in this a pattern of emotions, right? Behaviors, things like that for so long. And now they're learning a new way. They're kind of coming back to their own, but a new way of handling of situations like, oh my gosh. So it's so much of this emotional regulation. That's why it's so important to take care of your mind and your body as you're going through this, to be able to handle some of the really difficult moments in life. But it's also about transformation. And so a lot of it too, the holistic side, breathing, meditations. There's so many resources out there that we teach parties or teach clients. I teach clients what they can do. We practice those. Find what fits, because not it's everybody has their own unique thing that meets their needs and helps soothe them during the time of of real vulnerability.
Do you have repeat customers?
I do. Yes. I will have
Which
customers.
is so sad to say. I mean, you're kind of like in a business where you
Yeah.
want to only see somebody once, if you're being honest, right?
Yes, I'll have clients where I'll coach them through the beginning, right? The beginning stages. And then sometimes in divorce, because when you're divorcing, it shouldn't be like, okay, I'm 24 hours a day, I'm thinking about my divorce. No, you have to live your life. So how do we normalize your life now? Bringing out what you want in life on a daily basis as you're navigating this divorce. I might divorce them, I might coach them in the beginning for a few months, and then we phase out, and maybe it might go once a month, and they might not hear from them for like 2 or 3 months. Maybe the other party got an attorney. It got really litigious, and then they might come back to me like, Laura, blah, 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 and here I am, and I'm having to do this. And so, yes, or post divorce, man, they got through the divorce, but now what? What does a new chapter look like? So, especially in clients who are divorcing at age, or 50, maybe 60. I've had clients come to me and they're in their 60s and they're now, they're going through this journey. What does post divorce look like? Because that's where life starts, right? And so they're like, now what? I'm like, well, let's talk about this. And now we really get into dating. We start talking about sex. We start talking about all of these things that can bring excitement into our life. So yes, I do have.
But have you ever had anybody who's like gone through a divorce, you've gotten through it, then you see them again a couple years later and they're
Like for a second, no, I have not seen that.
good?
Yes, no, no, no.
Because I have had known people who, in fact, I had a conversation with a person and it's like she's on her third divorce. And I'm like, girl, your picker's broken. And it's like the same she marries the same person each time. And so I'm like, your picker's broken. You probably don't need to get married again because you've got a bad picker.
You're right. We have to identify why the pick. Why? What is that? Is this something that you can? Yeah, yeah. That's a whole other journey. But if they do come to me, and I will let you know.
Okay, but I thought when you were saying repeat customers, it's the same client just at different time points in the journey.
Yes,
But
yes.
I meant like, you got married, she's come to you, she got a divorce, and then 5 years later she's back to you because she's gonna divorce again.
Yes, yes, yes. No, not yet. But that's not to say it's not, going to happen. So it's always
Well, if you're
there.
in the job long enough, I'm sure it probably will because, I think that that is a common thing.
Oh yeah, multiple. Exactly. I mean, people are getting married 2 or 3 times, and they're trying to seek happiness in the best way possible that they know how to do it. So it's
Yeah. But I have read something, a statistic that said that second marriages typically are like usually the marriage where it sticks because the person has gotten to know themselves better and then they know like what it is they need, what it is they can offer. And so maybe they didn't just get married. I think oftentimes when you're young too, you get married because you're in love and you're not really thinking like, is this person going to be a good partner? Are they going to be a good co-parent? Are they going to be the one that I want there when I'm sick? Are they nurturing? Are they kind? You're just like, usually it's like, cause you're just in love and you're like, oh, I'm in love. So what's the next logical step is you get married.
right, right, right. You get married, you're like, oh, this is the person I want to have kids with. So now that
Yeah.
you've done that, so I think when you get remarried, the important thing is to recognize is one, yes, you now have a set of expectations. You know what you like, you know what you don't like. Communication should be more effective so you can express your needs who are, want to spoil the other person. I will say too, going into a new marriage, ensuring that your past is your past. That pain, ma- ensuring that you've had the time or you've had the support, or a therapist, coach, whomever, to be able to make that a purpose in life. Like your pain back then, maybe now it is turning into a peaceful journey and a purpose, but not to bring that into the marriage. So the last thing you want to do is start a new relationship with this with
Bringing that baggage.
right, with all that baggage and trying to have that heal the scars. Your scars need to be given their space and their grace, but in a place that's not your partner's responsibility to heal all those scars. That is our own responsibility to ensure we manage those and take care of those and get all the support that we need before we get into that new relationship.
So what made you make the switch from the insurance, like litigation negotiation side to become a divorce coach? Was there like a defining moment for you or just something that you kind of became interested in?
Oh, yes. No, great question. So my divorce with my children's father was many, many years ago, over 20 years ago. And I would say it was complicated. Didn't know a lot back then. But through parenting, through experience of life, through a lot of support that I had, growing in I would say many years later, we went through a moment of mediation. And I thought, wow, we went through mediation. I said, this is mediation? You mean it doesn't have to be all litigious? And so that was my first experience with mediation. Throughout time, people would ask me personally, Laura, how are you so happy in life? Your energy, blah, blah, those kind of things. And I'd be like so grateful for it. But I would start to get asked a lot by so many friends, family, or strangers, how did you get through your divorce? Where did you find your peace? Where did you find yourself again? And I think through that natural journey and push, I felt really called to help other families or help people know that you can turn your pain into your purpose, which is my mantra. You can, no matter what that pain is, the complications, it's a matter of choice to be determined to find peace again in your life. And so I wanted to help people really do that. So I became a certified mediator here in Virginia. And I'm, certified circuit family and in the juvenile courts, but also to become a coach because coaching parties one-on-one, so transformational. And I didn't have a coach. I didn't even know what a coach was 20 plus years ago.
Right.
And so then, what's a divorce coach? Such a need. So I started the journey to just really help people find positivity back in their life.
Well, tell us your craziest mediation story. Have you had anything that's been just like so outlandish? You're like, oh my gosh, I know you probably have confidentiality.
Yeah.
As long as you don't use names, but when you're just like blown away.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. I have, yes, I get a lot. I will say I have one. We were mediating. They had already finalized their divorce. They were actually coming back needed to work through custody visitation and child support. And I had mediated them. So mediations are I usually have them set for about 2 hours because after 2 hours, people are pretty tired. But they can go longer. But anyway, so I meted in like twice. Again, trying to be positive, peaceful throughout the mediation. And I tell them, I'm holding your hand. It was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back. And there was moments of they were crying to each other at times. We were really breaking some ground and unleashing some emotions to help them move forward. But the mediation ended with no agreement. And I thought they're like, I'm just going to take you back to court. We're going back to court. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. And then minutes later, I was walking down the courtroom with them, or we're not with them, but I was walking out of the courtroom and I just felt like, gosh, I wish I could have really helped them. Just such beautiful people, but they were really stuck in this emotional pain. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, I found them. They were still in the courtroom and they're like, we withdrew our petitions. And I'm like, wait, what? And I mean, these two, it was I thought for sure, because they both said they were going to court. They were going to take each other. They had all these threats going back and forth. And, I ended mediation. But they said, no, Laura, realize, and no, kudos, they set the peace in the room. Things stuck with them. They had 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes to just kind of think about things. And they're like, we know we've only got one shot at this, and this is going to affect our children. And they were younger children at the time. We're withdrawing everything. And they gave each other hugs. They were hugging each other. We were hugging. We were almost like crying with each other. It was really a powerful moment. So I would say that was really crazy because sometimes people just need to pause.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think when you get big emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes people get really just like headstrong. It's like almost like, even if they know it's the right thing to do, that, like to like maybe concede their point or whatever, but they just can't because they get in their ego and they're just like, they get in that mindset of, I want to win, when it's like, win is not, it means that, like, you win as a team or whatever, as a divorcing couple or whatever. Winning is the kids winning. So I think that is great that you really help, set that tone for people during mediation, that even if they're feeling the big emotions, that eventually they do, when the big emotions, it's like they spin it all up, and then they're like, gosh, okay, yeah, like I need to be reasonable.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for that. And it's true. People, they want to feel heard and they want to feel understood. Sometimes what I tell parties is, versus relying on someone else to provide that for you, let's figure it out within. But they get really like stuck in the pain of something in the past and they can't get past that and whatever. But that pause, that moment, breathe through it and realize the bigger picture is so profound on a person, or sometimes hopefully two people, whatever way. And really it's the kids that win when the parents can say, we can't be together, but let's put it together for the sake of the kids.
Yeah. And I would think for people over 50 with grown kids that maybe aren't the main priority, but just, this is a person that you like 30 years with. Be a decent human being. I would
Yeah.
think that, eventually that kind of, and maybe like you said, people that mediation is more successful for people over 50 is because we do realize that, like, it's not always worth it to be right or to win your way. It's like you want peace more than you want.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And yes, yes, yes. And they might feel like, again, how much time, like, because some of them do take a few years to, to go through the divorce, because one person may be really stuck in life. If one person is super ruthless, right? They're just going. We can't control what the other person is doing, but how we manage our own self. But they realize there's only just so much time. So I think parties start to really do a risk analysis. Well, how much am I going to fight over something? And how do I seek to be understood and get my own self-validation without the validation relying on this? Like, I need to have the house. Okay. Well, why do you need to have the house? Because I decorated the house. I did this, and they better give me the house because they were, unsupportive or whatever throughout our entire marriage. Well, that's an emotional component. So when we realize it's kind of tease that out, realize, yeah, if you're going to spend the next 5 years fighting over something, well, you might be 60 at that time. Someone's going to maybe have a heart attack before. I mean, health issues can arise from putting your body in so much stress for so long. So I think parties over the age of 50 really kind of start to have, like, focus on what their intentions are. And I want to say less fighting, maybe just more strategic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you have any last words of advice or wisdom for our listeners that if they are considering, you know, going through a divorce, or initiating a divorce, or if they are in the middle of divorce? Is there anything that you would say?
Yeah, I just want to tell people that, first of all, whatever someone is feeling right now, no one is, people cannot imagine or shouldn't imagine that they need to do this alone, that their past they've invested in themselves. And that is to be honored and they need to hold grace and kindness for what they have built and have a lot of self-respect for themselves. And as they want to journey and move through this process, there's resources, there's hope, there's support, such as myself as a negotiation coach, and that there are ways to go through the grief, go through the fear, and turn that pain into a beautiful purpose. And it's a matter of choice and finding support. So this is a negotiation coach. I'm here to help hold everybody's hand through that process.
Well, tell our listeners where they can find you.
Oh, thank you so much. Anybody can find me through my website is www.betterwithlaura.com. And my email is Laura, Laura, at betterwithlaura.com. And feel free to shoot me an email. You can on my website, you can find me. You can set up a free consultation and we'll chat about your situation and where you're at as a coach. That's where I meet you. I meet you at where you're at, and we create a plan to help you go through the journey. So, you're never alone.
Well, if I was ever going to contemplate a divorce, which I hope to be married until I die, I do have a wonderful husband. My listeners know that because I definitely, give him lots of props for everything. But I would absolutely say you would be the person I would come to because you have such a calming, grounding presence. So divorce is very stressful. I've had lots of friends and family members that have gone through it. So I know that having someone be your guide essentially is definitely imperative. So I'll make sure I'll drop all your information in the show notes so that people can find you easily from there. So I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been great. It's like I said, I've been wanting to cover this, growing trend of gray divorce, just because I know that probably a lot of our listeners are either going through divorce, considering it. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, you are so, so welcome anytime. I'm so grateful to be here today and to be able to talk about this. It's something that needs to be discussed more
Yeah, definitely.
through it. So thank you so, so much.
Well, if you haven't already hit the follow button on the podcast, do that now so that you can stay in the loop each week when we release a new episode. You can also follow us at Estrogen Dropouts on IG and TikTok, and you can watch full videos on YouTube. So check us out. We'll see you next week.
Thank you again.
All right. See you then. Bye.
This has been a production of Estrogen Dropouts, LLC.